Star Citizen is currently free to play during its Invictus Launch week, and anyone can now jump in and see the latest mega patch that's overhauled huge components of the game. And this truly is a huge patch that shows off Star Citizen's epic scale. From the new mega ships in the Expo Hall and the Idris Tour to the huge distribution centers where you can fight your way through waves of armed guards. And for the first time in basically ever, Star Citizen is starting to feel more like a game, not just a tech demo that can do some neat stuff, but a platform in which the major gameplay loops can actually be run through by the average player. Even some of the bigger name streamers who have never tried this game before are finally jumping in to explore the wonder that is Star Citizen, to some mixed reviews.
What was your impression of Star Citizen? I cannot believe the game is in that state after 12 years.
Alright, now firstly, if you're thinking about signing up for the free fly event, making an account, consider using my referral code to get some bonus starting credits. They'll be permanently added to your account, so whenever there's a character reset, you'll have some extra starting cash. Secondly, as you go through your character creation process, try setting Area 18 as your starting location that you can spawn near the Expo Hall, and check out the cool Invictus Launch Week event right at the start. The event is basically a mock Navy recruitment event, even though you can't technically be recruited into the Navy yet. And taking the train to the convention hall, standing at the UEE statue to take a picture, it all feels like actually touring a real convention hall. Heading through the entrance and seeing the new massive Polaris ship rise up off the floor was genuinely impressive. This ship might be a somewhat divisive design for some players, and also it's generally a big multi-crew ship reserved for Star Citizen's whales, but seeing the scale of this game in person is incredible. All the ships in the main hall this year are pretty darn big, but the Polaris, compared to, say, a previously large ship like the Constellation, really stands out. Unfortunately, we can't tour the inside of the Polaris yet, as the ship is still unfinished. However, in last Friday's Star Citizen Live, CIG dropped some news that the Polaris would be flyable later this year at the International Aerospace Expo, another event that's kind of the same as this one, but designed to show off major new ships and ship sales and all that kind of stuff. Plus, players can rent pretty much all the ships shown off for free, so it's a great opportunity to try out some of these super expensive ships that you otherwise might not be able to. And I believe when the Polaris launches, it'll be the largest spawnable combat ship in the game, assuming that CIG doesn't give us the Idris as well. And speaking of which, the Idris is available to tour now for the first time ever. I've covered leaks and previous events while the Idris was accessible to players who ran specific missions, but for the average person, it was relatively inaccessible and I never got to tour it personally. So this was a really cool experience, and it is such a massive maze-like interior that you'll find yourself stumbling around until you pop out on the bridge, or you find yourself looking out over the main hangar bay. Truly an impressive ship, both from scale, interior, exterior. It's going to be cool when this is spawnable in-game. And walking through this ship, it really does give me a good idea of how Star Citizen's multi-crew gameplay could really expand to a massive scale. While romping around with a few friends in a 3 to 4 seater ship is a great time, you can literally land one of those smaller ships inside of an Idris, which is essentially a flying base. And it's not even close in size to the biggest ships that are planned for this game. Now, speaking of gameplay, for a free fly event, 3.23 has been unusually stable. I was able to group up with Matimio and a few others to run some missions, and for the most part, nothing really got in our way. Now, to be fair, I did run into multiple broken missions earlier that evening that didn't let me complete them, but compared to the past during massive free fly events, the game has been so much more playable and much more stable. Now, the massive distribution centers were particularly cool to play through finally on some missions. Landing to the sides of these facilities, breaching into a major bulkhead door, and clearing out the armed NPCs was genuinely cool. The NPCs felt a bit more responsive, not challenging by any stretch, but certainly less brain dead than they have been in the past. And the sprawling distribution centers are beautifully crafted and fun to fight in. They're not technically quite as big in scale as some of the original concepts portrayed them to be, but they do feel like there's a few elevator areas that might be added in later to expand these complexes with multiple levels and subterranean caves. The mission opportunities feel like they could be endless here, especially once engineering gameplay is added in, needing to disable power relays to open doors and turn off security checkpoints. Progress from zone to zone could be really cool. And I haven't even come close to exploring the full extent of new missions added in this patch, but the variety is exciting for sure. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a free fly event without a bunch of new ships CIG was trying to sell to the community, and one of the big winners here is the Ursa Medevac. This is pretty much the same old six-wheeled Ursa rover from before, but with a new medical bed in the back versus seats or storage. And this is a big deal now because medical beds can be used as short-range respawn points. Basically, drive this thing up to a dangerous mission, park it out front somewhere safe, and then head in knowing that if you die, you'll be able to respawn here. And heading into the distribution centers, it was clear that it was already being used for this purpose outside by some other players. And this new medical bed gameplay applies to ships as well, like the Cutlass Red and other ships that have medical beds. In fact, parking one of the new Ursa rovers inside of a ship without a medical bay, like say the Corsair, gives that ship the ability to now spawn your crew, which is a massive gameplay improvement and still early in concept, but it seems like CIG are starting to understand that people need a way to get back into the fight in a relatively timely manner and not hamper group gameplay like they have been before. Potentially a more accessible Star Citizen, dare I say. There's also a new grav bike, which generally speaking isn't a particularly exciting addition to the game, but because it's incredibly small in size, it means it can fit in just about any ship out there, and it could be great for small crew who need some additional ground transport options. Now, of course, I'm still exploring the 3.23 patch, which again is massive. It's loaded with new features, and the core theme that I'm finally starting to see with these changes is gameplay and accessibility. Not to a polished extent, but the Squadron 42 features that hopefully are making that game fun and accessible for single player are now trickling over into the multiplayer, and it's a pretty big deal for anyone who's been playing this game for a while. The new looting UI is great now. It works more consistently. The star map, while still a bit clunky, is a massive quality of life upgrade for coordinating and getting around quickly. The Moby-Glass mission UI is better. The minimap is a godsend for navigation. The interaction prompts are great. Not finished yet, but already I can see the potential of this cleaner, more streamlined system. Now that said, there is still a long way to go when it comes to Star Citizen's accessibility. Booting up Star Citizen solo for the first time is going to be a rough process, and I wouldn't recommend it for the average player without watching an in-depth guide on just how to get started. The key bindings in this game are also a still absolute mess, and CIG really needs to figure out a way to start consolidating functions into more shared function experiences. We also now have Star Citizen's 4.0 patch on the progress tracker, and it's a huge deal. Server meshing and pyro are literally on the board for the next major content pushes. CIG called 2024 the watershed year for Star Citizen, which may actually prove to be true. This is the coolest the game has ever been. Maybe not the most polished, but despite things like missions breaking and laggy bugs occurring, what's here is very good, and if it can be polished, or at the very least not buggy and game breaking at times, I think we can realistically start to look at Star Citizen as more of a game than a tech demo. There's enough core content now to keep players engaged for much longer. Endgame is still not really anywhere to be seen yet, but the early to even mid-game missions and tasks really have fleshed out kind of a core Star Citizen experience that'll keep the average newcomer busy for quite a while. Now, I'm not saying that you need to get in and play Star Citizen now because, well, you're still going to find that it's very buggy in many ways and has a rough onboarding experience. But if you can weather some of that jankiness, there is a good time to be had behind it all. I'm very excited to see the 3.23 patch expand and get hopefully more stable as we progress towards 4.0 and beyond. Have you been able to check out the latest Free Fly event? What has been your experience so far? Buggy, stable, fantastic, you hate it? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. Up next, check out my devlog for a space game that I'm making. I got inspired to make my own top-down space adventure, and I'm having an absolute blast working on it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.